Okay, well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Monday, December 21st, 2015 City Council meeting. At this time, I will call the meeting to order, and we will do the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, Shelley, you want to do roll call for us?
I can. Albertson,
Here.
Bueller, Danforth, Manty, absent, Riefenberger,
Here.
Roby,
Here.
Solom,
Here.
Thorson,
Here.
Tupper,
Here.
Vilhauer.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. This time I'll look for a motion and a second for discussion on approval of the consent agenda. Motion by Bruce, second by Don. Any questions? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Number 2, approval of the agenda. I would like to, no, I'm not going to put that in. We're going to just do the regular agenda here. So I'll look for a motion and a second for discussion. Motion by Randy, second by Glenn. Any questions, any discussion?
Are we putting it up on the screen there, Steve, the agenda?
Yes, it should be. They'll get that right now. Okay, any other questions? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Number 3, application for a transfer and ownership of a retail on-sale liquor license from 5WG LLC, doing business as Prairie Winds Golf Course at 555 South Lake Drive, to Prairie Winds Golf LLC, doing business as Prairie Winds Golf Course at the same location. At this time, I will open the public hearing if anybody wants to speak in favor of or against this. Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. I'll look for a motion and a second for discussion.
So moved.
Motion by Dan, second by Bruce. Any questions? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Number 4, amendments to the 2015 city budget. Ordinance number 1531, supplemental appropriations for 2015. This is a second reading, and Shelley, I'll let you take on this.
Well, I don't really have anything to add from last time. You had the explanations. So I guess at this time, I'll just ask for a motion. If you have any questions, I can answer them.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'll get a motion and a second for discussion.
So move.
Motion by Glenn, second by Randy. Is there any questions you have for Shelley?
Yeah, Shelley, I guess you and I had this conversation in your office. Could you just give us a real brief overview? I mean, I guess I'm asked as a new kid on the block here. These are things that we have been discussing throughout the course that we're just now formalizing by virtue of taking this action. Is that correct?
For the most part, yeah. There are some just small, like under City Hall for the building maintenance and cleaning service. Those were just some things that happened throughout the year that were not anticipated, and they went over budget. They're very small, minor issues that we need to do to correct the budget. Some of these others that said, approved by City Council, those were things that had taken formal action. The other things like the bonding debt, the refunding the debt, those were all done by formal action, and this is just kind of cleaning it up so that we're not exceeding our authorized budget.
And this is something that we typically do this time of the year, every
Yes.
year, is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Shelley, I do have one question on the one that's for the $30,000 on the patrol cars. Was that so? That what did you say, Mike? Is that the receipt of the grant? Well, my question was that a non-budgeted item then, or was that the drug vehicle? It was the drug vehicle. Okay, all right.
Yep, and because it wasn't a federal grant, it has to go through the supplement process, not the grant process that will go through in item B. So,
Any other questions? Hearing none, I will look for council action. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Now what we have to do is take a look at the appropriation of the grant funds. And Shelley, if you will give us a clue on that.
yep, these are just they don't need to be done by formal ordinance. They can just be done by a regular motion. These are also things that throughout the year you have approved to apply for and accept, and the money has been done. And because we don't net anything, we've got a revenue and we've exceeded our expenditures, and now we've got to go back and make that right and increase those budgets. So that's basically what we're doing here.
Perfect. So at this time, I'll look for a motion and a second for discussion. It's motion by, who is it, John and Bruce? Motion by John, second by Bruce. Any questions that you have on that? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Number 5, second reading of ordinance number 1532, amending zoning district boundaries by rezoning city property from I-2 Heavy Industrial District to C1 Community Commercial District. At this time, I will open the public hearing. If there's anyone that wants to speak in favor of or against this, this is your chance. Hearing none, I'll close the public hearing. I will look for a motion and a second for discussion. Motion by Mike, second by Don. Any questions that you have for Shane? Shane, maybe you want to bring this up and explain to the folks what this is we're looking at.
Okay, I have, Ray can put my screen up on the big screen. Is it up there? Okay. So the area that is hatched includes, I'll use the pointer here a little bit. The area to the north here would be the proposed ice arena area when we come forward with that project. The area to the southwest is the current location of the softball complex improvements. The area on the east side of 17th Street Southeast is the area that includes the Anza soccer complex. All of those were previous or are currently zoned industrial, and we propose to change the zoning to C1, which better fits the use and potential other uses of that area. With that, it does meet all of the criteria needed for the C1 zoning, so it should be good.
Okay, so are there any questions you have for Shane on this?
Shane, that includes more property than just the Anza and the softball and ice. That includes all of our property, right?
Those are all city-owned
Yep.
areas, yeah.
But that does include the rezoning of all of that.
Correct.
Any other questions? Hearing none, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Number 6, resolution number 15-30, establishing fees for city licenses, permits, administration, other miscellaneous items. Doug, you want to come up? I think this is pretty much exactly the way we've had it over the last 3 years, 4 years. There's just been a little bit of change on your side. Maybe you want to just touch base on that for us.
Three different areas that we put in. One was ambulance standby under the ambulance side. This is a fee for if there's any for-profit type events, and it just sets a fee by the hour rate. So we added that this year. We'd never had that type of fee before, so we don't use that very often. This wouldn't be used for school events and things like that, nonprofit type things. So this would be used when we have to be there. So that's that one there. The other area that we've looked at is the regional training center. You can see we've got some fees for the training grounds, both for the classroom and for the training grounds. Currently, the classroom is free to the public, and if it's a nonprofit type meeting, it can be used for free. If it's used for the training center, there'd be a fee for the classroom. There'd also be a fee down on the training ground. We're getting a lot of requests for use of that training ground to possibly turn it into a regional training center. So we've come up with a fee structure that we've ran by some other departments and things like that. There's a lot of certified firefighter training that they'd like to do out there. And these fees would help support the utilities, things like that. For these user fees, that would be just for the training center. This would not include any instructor type fee. So that would be a separate deal, and that wouldn't be sponsored by necessarily Watertown Fire Rescue. We would just charge for the facility, and that instructor would have to have a liability insurance and be a certified instructor and things like that. the instructor would be the one that would pay these user fees for putting on that class and using that facility. So that's the second area. The third area that we're looking at, some changes for user fees are in our permits for sprinkler systems in the building permit area. And what we're doing there is we have a lot of codes in place that we review, and we review a new building coming in, and we will approve the building and look at it to see if it needs a sprinkler system. We work right with the contractor on all these fees to see if they're required to have a sprinkler system. They'll be able to pull this information right off our website, and the contractor would be responsible for filling out that permit and paying those fees for putting in those sprinkler systems. And it's just a better way of us tracking all of these permits, making sure everything's in place. And this money be for our fire prevention division to go through and look at all these different permits and do these approvals and making sure all the work is being done that's said to be done. These fees, we looked at areas like Sioux Falls, Brookings, Aberdeen, Rapid City, and we've kind of taken these fee structures off what other communities are doing. So that's about it in a nutshell for the three types of fees that we're
Did you
looking at.
touch on the ambulance very much? I might have missed it. Maybe
That
go
was the
down
first
a
one,
little
yeah,
bit.
the ambulance standby. That's the
Okay.
only new fee on
Okay.
the ambulance side, so.
Okay, thanks, Doug. So
Mhm.
at this time, I will look for a motion and a second for discussion for Doug. Motion by Don, second by Mike. Any questions you have for Doug?
Doug, just since we implemented the fee for fire services, how has that gone? I mean, is it, maybe we covered this a little bit in the past, but
You know, I think it's gone fairly well. We look at the system and things like that, and worked it right in. And we also track at what other communities are doing to. There's a lot of communities and some in South Dakota, even some of the bigger paid services that are doing very similar things to what we're doing, and I think it's working out pretty well. We come in and put out the fire, and we keep it the cost as reasonable as we can, just to help cover our expenses, the foam and overtime and things like that. So I think it's really working out pretty well.
I guess my question is more referred to the collection of it. I mean, it hasn't been an issue collecting, or most of the
You
insurance
know-
companies, since we put it in ordinance, are paying
I-
it now?
I think it's a lot better since we put it into ordinance,
Okay.
and I don't have those exact dollars in front of me, but I think it's working fairly well.
Okay, thank you.
I've got a question, not of you, Doug, just in general. I mean, do we review these on a regular basis? I mean, or we?
Absolutely. What we do is every year this has to come in front of the council, so then each department has an opportunity to look at this around budget time and see how their fees go. I know Shane was rather new in the budgeting process, but he'll be more involved in it come next January or June, July.
Mayor, as I went through this, and it seems like, do we ever look at this instead of on a department-by-department basis, but then bring that all in together and see where we have differences in the, I'm assuming that some of these are just processing costs, I'm assuming. Is our goal here to then just recover costs of processing? Is that the objective of the fees?
Yes.
Because it seems like, as I look through these, some of them are $20, $25, $50 just for basic processing on something. It seems like a lot of those, from a timing standpoint, probably all about the same, unless there's something special with some of these. It just seems like
Well, you
we're
know,
either shorting ourselves on some or I don't know. It just seems like we're all over the board. It seems like there could be easily some standardization here somewhere.
Well, you know,
but-
I do recall, like a sidewalk cafe permit, when we first started doing that, the council decided at that time they wanted $25. So that's kind of like how some of these are come out at. Demolition permit, excavation permit, fence permit, they've been around for a long time, and they probably haven't been changed very often, and the building service needs to probably look at those, I would think. And that's where Shane and Kenny will look at those this next year and kind of give us an update and see if we're in compliance with everybody else.
Doug, did you say that you've taken that from other communities? Is that where these numbers have come from, or are you, it's just pretty much what we've always had?
Yeah, we've looked at some of the other communities for like the building department services for the sprinklers and hoods and things like that. The ambulance standby and the training center. I had to look in a bigger region in South Dakota to kind of look at some of the thoughts on those two. So.
And I
I
think
just
it would be good if you did, take a look at some of those fees that you have and get those from the other cities too. There's a lot of things in here that are fees, I mean, there's just many, the fire sprinklers and the alarm system permits and fire suppression and all those. I don't know if you've actually stayed in contact with these other cities on all those, or if you're getting those emails from them, or what you're doing. I don't know.
Yeah, we did get all those costs right from some of the other cities, the 3 or 4 of them, and there are some that are a little bit cheaper and some that are a little bit higher, and we're kind of in the middle of the pack, maybe to the slightly lower end to get this started out, see how it goes. So.
I want to just say I kind of agree with what Mike said too. I think if we could standardize this and sort of simplify it, but I do look at some of these, if it's $20 or $15 plus tax for fingerprinting. I would assume there's some administrative fees attached to that. Are there, in some instances, I'm assuming there's billing, or is it all paid up front? If somebody comes in for a permit, does it vary?
They're paid up right up front,
Okay.
right? As soon as any building permit runs through building services, and Kenny's folks upstairs will collect that. The fingerprinting goes through the police station, and they collect that over there. So there's a lot of different entities that collect the dollars, so.
So then there's filing and there's
Yes.
some sort of handling that's attached to that, I would imagine.
Yep, exactly.
So I just wonder if some of these even cover that, the amount of cost that we have involved in that.
Right, and I think that's where we'll probably take a look at them and review these closer next year. Any other questions? I don't believe I have a motion yet. Do I have a motion? If there's no more questions, I'll look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Doug. Yep. Number 7, renew airport liability insurance policy for 2016 and authorization to pay the premium. I'll look for a motion and a second for discussion. Motion by Bill, second by Brad. Any questions on this? Shelley, you want to fill them in a little bit on this? This is an annual deal.
It is, yep. Every January 1, we renew. This is something that most airports are excluded from general liability coverage because of the size of the losses if they happen. And so this is one that we do go out side of the Public Assurance Alliance. They came back, this is the same Old Republic Aerospace. They're the ones that insured us last year. They came back with the exact same premium as they did, no change. And within this motion and second, we do need to officially act. If you look at the bottom, there's that mandatory terrorism risk insurance act. We've never opted for that in the past, and really the only way that it's good is if we would actually have an official act of terrorism that's declared by the president. Then this coverage would go into effect. Otherwise, it would not. So we've never taken it in the past. I think our risk is fairly low for that occurrence. So I know that Bill, you made the motion and Thorson seconded. So if you could just at least say renew the coverage and then exclude or include the
Yep.
terrorism coverage.
I would make the motion that we exclude the terrorist portion
Okay.
of it.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Is there any other questions? Hearing none, I will look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Number 7, consideration of request for sewer and garbage credits for 618 North Maple. if you folks remember it, well, there will probably be some new ones on the board here that were not around last year when this came up. We actually, this is a home at 618 North Broadway that has a couple of apartments that are not rented. They have to keep them warm so that they do not freeze up during the wintertime. What happened is that since they do run the heat in there and the water in there, they're getting charged for the sewer and garbage. And they're asking us, and we actually asked them to come back every year to bring this forward to the council. That's what the request of our council last year was. So what they're asking for is a credit on their garbage and on their sewer bill. So what I'll do is you want to talk first?
Yep, I just want to, just to kind of catch at least two new people up and then to kind of give everybody from last year. This came in front of you, a letter similar in December, on the December 15th meeting. They only had one apartment, the basement apartment, that you acted on last year. This year, they're saying that there's that same basement, number 7, and then there's an attic apartment, number 5. So they're actually asking for 2 of these. And I will read to you just the motion that you guys approved last year. So basically, there was a motion, a second, approving the sewer and garbage credits at 618 North Broadway for the time period of October 15 of 2014 through April 15th of 2015, as long as the apartment remains vacant. The owner will have to apply no later than October 15 of each year, providing a bill showing the apartment is vacant to continue the credit to future years. Now, since that time, the council changed our overall credit policy that there are no credits allowed unless there's a billing in error. So that's kind of why this is back before you, because there, in that motion, there was kind of something reflecting that there could be a request for future credits. So that's why it's here. They're asking for 2 on 2 apartments. And so you guys need to consider whether you want to use the same time period or if you want to use a different time period.
So how is this billed? Are they being billed separate sewer and water charges for each apartment?
It is. They only have one water meter. And when you have one water meter, there's no way to check whether there's any water usage. So every apartment that's listed there has the sewer and garbage attached, because there's no way to tell whether somebody's using it or not. So that's why they were asking for the credit in the first place.
But are we asking for just the garbage then? Or is it, because sewer is based on the amount of water that's used, right?
Right, and that's why the finance office can't credit it, because it's technically not billed in error, because we have no idea. They're stating that it's vacant. And so that's kind of before you. And the same thing with apartments. Most of them just have one big garbage. They don't have individual, or they'll have a half a dozen cans, but anybody can put their garbage in them. They're not really assigned, so you can't really tell that garbage can is never being used, type of a thing. So it's just, it's up to you guys if you want to continue to do this in the winter months while they have that heat turned on and it's being utilized, or if you don't.
You know, as far as sewer and water goes, you know, there's still infrastructure there that has to be paid for, that supplies them, so that when they do want to use it, it's available for them to use. The garbage may be a little different thing, but to me, I think that makes a difference on whether or not they should have to pay for that.
I thought I probably disagreed at the time, but I thought the conversation was if they wanted to stop that, they basically had to shut off the water and take the meter out.
Right, which they can't, because one meter furnishes all the other apartments in that house. They're not separately metered. So there's no way to do that, and the water is what triggers the sewer and the garbage from being turned on or turned off.
You know, I have a question on this, and I know where the house is, I understand that. But my question is, you know, apartment number 7 and number 5 have never been rented. Why do they continue to call them apartments? I mean, you would think that they would just get rid of that terminology that there's 2 apartments in there, and wouldn't the utilities then just charge for what's in there?
Basically, the only difference I see is garbage service. Because sewer and water still needs to be in the whole building. If there's nobody in those two apartments, it's not being used. Sewer is based on water usage, so.
And I think back when we changed the sewer and garbage policy, kind of what Bruce was saying, I think that's kind of why we did away with that and said, you know, it's there, it's available. If you choose to use it, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine. But, you know, the fees are there, and they're being charged. And again, the reason this is before you is just in that motion, you know, they said they could apply for future credits in future years. And so I just wanted to give you guys a chance to look at this and see if this was something you wanted to make an exception on, or if you didn't, because this was done prior to us kind of changing the overall policy.
I think what I'll do, Shelley, is I will ask for a motion as saying, do you want the motion similar to what you had from last year?
If that's the council's wishes, is to do it from October 15th to April 15th.
Yeah, and can you read that motion one more time, what you had?
It would be approving the sewer and garbage credits at 618 North Broadway for a time period of October 15, 2015 through April 15 of 2016, as long as the apartments remain vacant.
Okay, so I would look for a motion and a second on that for discussion purposes, as she read that. A motion by Bruce, second by Mike. Is there any other questions that you might have for us?
I do. I have a question. So during this time, is their garbage can taken? Or are they still gonna be there?
Actually, I don't believe that there's anybody has ever lived in these places, but yeah, they're gonna collect the garbage at the building.
I believe it's just one large
It
garbage
is one-
container, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess I've just got a question generally. Why did this come before this body once for me? Don't we have situations like this all over town? I mean, why did this one particular party come to us?
We were having some issues where people would be snowbirds and they would leave and they wanted credits for not having the garbage picked up, you know, during the winter months. But yet they would keep their heat on and their water on, and it would trigger the garbage and water that way. But other than that, we don't get a lot of requests for this anymore.
Well, I think we cleaned that up by making them come in for requests. That's what triggered this too, so.
Well, no, I think we just kind of took it out altogether. It's if you have your water turned on, you have the sewer and the garbage there. If you choose to use it, that's your prerogative. If you don't choose to use it, we're not going to tell you do or don't. But because you don't use it, we're not going to automatically credit it back to you. This one was a little unique because they have apartments that aren't really apartments, but they have pipes in them that they have to keep heated. And because they only have one water meter, then all the apartments get charged for sewer and garbage because they don't know which one is using it. So they're basically just saying they're vacant, they're not getting any money for them, they're just asking for those fees to be credited. And last year, that was okay to do that through our policy. That was an appeal process. And you guys okayed it for those winter months while they're keeping the heat going in there. And since then, we've kind of changed that to say, no, if you don't have separate water meters that you can turn on, you're going to pay for the service regardless of whether they are or aren't. So that's kind of why this is back here. Do you want to continue to make exceptions for this? Do you not? And if you do, in what form do you want to do it in?
Right, and I do believe the utilities is going around to apartments like this, and I know they have the last few years. They're actually making them put in separate meters for each apartment, only because of if there's leaks and such, you don't know where this is happening at and where it's coming into play. So that's probably going to happen.
Does this place have separate water, or it doesn't have separate water meter? Does it have separate electricity meters? And how does he monitor that? How's the rest of it?
They must, because the whole I think the building is electric, there's no furnace, everything is electric. So I would say that if that would be in the name of the renter who's renting, and they pay all the electric for the lights and the heat.
For each apartment, more than likely, each would have their own meter. Any other questions for Shelley? Hearing none, how much money are you talking here anyhow, do you know?
It's the 1050 for garbage and the 21, is it 2150? 21
Per month.
for the sewer.
This
Times
is
however
different, but
months.
it's still the same. What about somebody that's got an apartment that is metered separately and nobody's living there? The only way they can get out of it is turn the water off and have the meter taken out. If somebody has an apartment that's all metered and they say that it's not rented, and I want to take it off the rolls, I have to have the city come, or the utilities come, take the water meter out, and then they have a charge for doing that, and then another charge to hook it back up.
They only have one water meter on this
I,
one.
I realize, but, so then by having that, he's got an advantage over somebody else that has them all metered, because if you have it all metered, you haven't got any way of doing this. You can't get out of it if you have it all metered.
Well, for some reason, these things are called apartments and they're not renting them ever. They could be storage rooms for all I know or care. I mean,
Well, like
they
Steve said,
aren't-
though, then
they're
just
calling
apply
them
to
apartments,
take
but
them
yet-
off the roll altogether then.
But they still, each one of these, I'm assuming what's happening is each one of these has its own electric meter. They all have one common water meter, okay? And they each have their own electric meter. And if, whether this is an apartment or it's not an apartment, if it's an item that is signed up for service, which it would have to be because it's got its own meter, that triggers the other things to come into play.
But to the other side of that, somebody has a large apartment building and it's all metered separately and nobody's renting. He's got 30 units and he's got 20 of them renting, there's 10 empty. The only way he can ask for this is to say, turn off my water, take out my meter, and then and pay the fees to have that done. It's not an equal playing field then. If he gets this taken
think it's
off,
a
then I
difference
think you got all kinds of people that should have the opportunity to have it taken off if they're not rented.
Correct me if I'm wrong, didn't we used to have a lot more people that asked for
Yeah.
credits?
That's why
Like
we went the way we did.
The snowbirds, and we kind of eliminated those to clean that up. But we did make an exception for this one last year, if I remember right.
So if he would close those two apartments, so that would solve the problem. I mean, if he just said he didn't have those anymore.
It's
He would
tied
still
to
have a meter in their
addresses.
electric
He
meter.
still
Yeah.
has to heat this with electric heat, so he would have
Right.
service going into there, which is
Right.
what triggers the rest of it.
Yeah, so in the summer months, they don't charge him anything because he doesn't have any electricity going. In the winter, he must have the heat running, and that generates
And
electricity.
the sewer's all hooked together, I suppose, with that all those apartments have
Right.
the same common sewer, so you really can't do
Right,
much
because
about
they have
that.
the same water
Well,
meter.
To me, and Bill, I don't disagree, but it seems to me like these individuals need to do a little bit of this on their own. Why wouldn't they have, at a minimum, have the 2 units put under 1 meter then? Spend to have them, they're gonna save half of it, right? Why should we pay the whole bill? At least they could invest in minimizing it, cutting it down by half. If they spend a little money and got the 2 apartments under 1 meter. I mean, they could do that. At least
Certainly,
they
they
could
could,
minimize that.
certainly
versus
they
asking
could
us.
account for that in their building rates for the rest of the apartments and not have a loss.
Okay. I'm gonna look for council action on this.
Sure, on what you're gonna vote on? Basically, the motion was to approve the sewer and garbage credits at 618 North Broadway for the time period of October 15, 2015 through April 15th, 2016, as long as the apartments remain vacant.
Okay, that's our motion. Y'all,
And,
Got it.
and keeping in mind, after that motion was done, we made a change to our ordinance, right? That was after that fact, saying we will not do this.
that's correct.
Is that correct? Just so.
Okay, I have the motion and a second on the floor. I will look for council action. All those in favor say aye. Opposed?
No.
Motion failed. Okay, We will move on to number 9, authorization for mayor to sign application for a bridge improvement grant for the design of Third Avenue Northwest Bridge in the amount of $87,200. I look for a motion and a second on this for discussion.
So moved.
Motion by Randy. Second by Mike. Just so you folks out in watching from the audience and television, this was discussed in quite detail in our work session. So if you want to just kind of skim over for us, Shane, what was discussed.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. The Third Avenue Northwest Bridge is come to the point where it needs to be replaced in its near future. We're proposing that we prepare to have that done by the year 2020. And to do so, we want to get in the bridge improvement grant system. And the first step of doing that is to apply for a grant for the engineering services, which include the hydraulic analysis and the design. And the grant requires a 80-20 participation, 80% by the South Dakota DOT and 20% by the local government agency. And we can voluntarily increase our portion of the proration to gain additional pointing towards our project so that we would enhance our ability to receive other financing in the future. Whether or not that's a consideration by the council in this motion should state that if that is desired. But in essence, we want to get this project in the state grant system. The first step is to get the design engineering part of it done, and then again, we will apply for another grant in the future when we get ready to construct it.
Shane, would you recommend that? Would you recommend the council to do 50%, let's say, instead of 20?
Well, you gain 3 points for every 5% of increase. So if you wanted to raise the level of your participation at the design level, and it raises your bridge rating or pointing system up high enough, it could maybe pay you back on phase 2 for the construction. It may not, but it possibly could. So you got to keep that in mind too. So if you wanted to say increase your odds by another 10 points, roughly increase by 15%. So we would pay 35% of this initial fee, which right now the 20% puts the public input at $21,800. So
And you're recommending to work with the 20%?
at a minimum,
Yes.
yes.
Even if you up the ante on this, that doesn't mean you're required to do that at the time of the bridge itself, right?
I assume not, but I
'Cause that would be
don't
the
know for sure.
concern, what level of commitment you put in at this level, is that gonna continue for the
That I
actual
don't know.
bridge itself? Because now we're
I
talking a
would
lot
think
of
that
money.
would be a different application for dollars on the DOT for the bridge, actual building of the bridge, I would assume.
Shane, we can apply for this annually, correct? It's just a once-a-year deal?
Yes.
Okay. If we applied this year and we didn't get it, would we know who got their grants requested, and would we know if any of them or which ones of them may have purchased or increased their match percent in order to obtain points, so that we would know? Because this is fairly new process, my understanding, correct?
Correct.
It seems like a hokey process to me, but.
Well, and the unfortunate thing is about the new system is, it used to be they kind of separated out state bridges from county bridges from municipal bridges, and now they've kind of all lumped them in. So we're competing against all bridges in the state of South Dakota for money, not just a portion of them. And so we're new to this system. We don't know how this system's going to fully function at this point, but you bring up a good point. If we'd fall out of it or fail to get a grant this year, we certainly would be able to put in a grant for the following year. And by having 1 year of experience, we would know where we stack up against our rival projects.
Well, and that's where I'm coming from, is to know where we're, what we're competing against. Are we competing head-to-head with the people putting the minimum in? Or are we losing out to those that are buying up, so to speak, to the higher point system?
Right. We won't be able to answer that question for a year.
Go ahead.
I just will make the comment, this is all being funded by that increase in the gas tax, and the DOT set aside some money for that. There will be a lot of competition for these dollars, make no doubt about it. One of the requirements was, specifically for counties, you had to have a 5-year plan. So a lot of them didn't have that. So a lot of the counties had to scramble, put their 5-year plan together, but the counties are so far behind on bridge repair. So there will be a lot of competition for the dollars.
That's what I was gonna say. It's gonna be real slim to be able to get these
Well-
dollars, especially this first
Yep.
year. I think it's gonna take numerous years before you get any money from the big program.
I'll give you an example of why it's tiered towards counties, is they can actually get a 10-point maximum advantage in the pointing system by passing a wheel tax. We don't have that ability, so that's 10 points that you're automatically not gonna be competing against other projects.
So I think we do. I think we go ahead and put in the application and play it from here. You'll keep us informed how that application is going and then what you're hearing in the future, you know, tell us if people had to buy points or not. Is that fair enough with you guys? Okay, so I will look for council action. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, any old business that you need to discuss? Hearing none, is there any new business that needs to be discussed?
Mayor, can I go back to the old business for a second?
Sure.
I actually listened to you this morning on WhatsApp, which prompted a question. What did you say this morning? Did we get turned down on the idea of moving the light by the mall? Is that,
Pretty much.
okay?
Yep. The DOT really wasn't too hepped up on moving it from that mall corner over to 14th Street. They just didn't think it was gonna work right.
So it was a functional issue that they had a concern, or was it a funding issue?
Well, I don't think it had anything to do with funding. I think it was all functional. They were pretty adamant. You were there, weren't you, Don? And Shane, you were there when they talked about that in our meeting, and they just said that that's something they didn't want to take on.
Do they realize how bad the traffic is to try to get on Highway 212 and that people are all going over to that light? I mean-
I think they realize it. I truly do. I believe that they understand the traffic that is on that corner. I think they truly understand that. The corner on 14th, they didn't like the idea, just even to buy property to go straight across. But I think they look at it and say that it's an issue of Watertown for that corner.
Would they don't have any problem if we were to extend 11th though? To extend that
No, I
light to
think they were-
four-way,
I think they were okay with 11th Street.
to make it a four-way light, so.
Right. But that in turn, I mean, even if they extend 11th Street, you get up to Jensen Avenue, and then where do you go? Because it's a dead end. And we've already been told by some of the owners out there that they don't think it's fair that Jensen Avenue goes into their parking lot. They actually have the right to shut that down, and I think they're looking for direction. I believe there are stakeholders out there that would love to get involved and get that road fixed up. I think it should be a priority for us to at least investigate that and to look at it and see where it goes.
Well, at least get that group back together and get the stakeholders back at the table and,
Right. I remember when Alan sat there, though, he didn't really sound to me like he was too interested in
Yeah,
putting some cash in.
yeah, the mall didn't seem to really want to put any skin in the game, but everybody else did, so.
Right. Any other questions? I didn't know you ever listened to the radio. Where's Tanner? Is Tanner still here?
I disguise
God,
my
you
voice
should-
and call in when you're on there.
Any liaison member reports?
Actually, I do. Probably remember a couple of weeks ago, I reported that I was heading out to Pier along with a few other people to apply for the 319 grant application for the Upper Big River watershed project. That hearing took place a couple weeks ago. We were requesting 512,000 over a course of 3 years. We were only granted 200,000, so it's quite a cut in funding. So I know Roger Foote, the director out there here in Watertown, is trying to rework some numbers and see what we can do to keep that project alive the next 3 years. But it was a significant cut in the funding versus what we had requested.
And I appreciate that, Glenn, and it was significant, and I do think that Roger will probably be coming forward and talking to you guys, letting you know about the phosphorus plant, you know, where we're at on the funding side of that I believe that grant is coming to an end also. So it's something that probably will not continue in the long term. Any other questions?
I don't have a question. I just want to report that from the Plan Commission, I sit on that as a liaison, and I really just do want to thank them for all the work that they do. You know, those are non-paid, and I'm telling you, it hasn't been easy for the last maybe year, because everybody wants that new Stony Point thing to be successful, I think. And yet they just, you know, it just keeps coming back, and so I just want to thank those guys for all the work they do for what they get out of it, because it's not an easy job, let me tell you.
Yeah, they don't even get a chicken dinner. Some do. Remember that? Any other questions or any comments about liaison members' reports? Executive session, I do have a need to go into executive session for personnel issues and union negotiations. I don't expect anything to happen after this when we come out of the executive session. So I will look for a motion, a second to go in. Motion by Mike, second by Bruce. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.